Mabuhay, Kamustika. Welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Forbidden to marry by COVID restrictions. That's how bad this is getting. I want to talk about a Canadian town requiring COVID vaccine proof in order to get married, of all things. Then say a little bit more about restriction, prevention, and dissuasion, or dissuading people from getting married. Please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea. I have podcasts on lvbts.com, where you can find them on Podbean. I'll have those links in the description box. I want to make marriage great again, but have found a lot of resistance to the idea of marriage that you can learn about by watching my videos. Now, governments have come up with some silly restrictions to our rights, but here is one that really makes me upset. Leave a comment in the comments section. This is from lifesitenews.com. No jab, no wedding. Canadian town requires vaccine proof to get married. A marriage license is required to get legally married in Canada, meaning that Oakville's rules effectively prohibit people who refuse the COVID shots from tying the knot. And the article is lists Oakville, Ontario here. An Ontario town prohibits engaged couples who have chosen not to take the COVID shots from obtaining a marriage license. Oakville's regulations require that anyone who wants a marriage license from now on must show proof of inoculation. Appointments for marriage licenses and ceremonies that have already been booked prior to September 22nd will not require proof of vaccination. The city website says, however, any new appointments for marriage licenses and ceremonies will be required. Ceremonies will be held inside town halls, or town hall, as of November 4th, 2021. A marriage license is required to get legally married in Canada, meaning that Oakville's rules effectively prohibit people who refuse the COVID shots from tying the knot. Couples cannot obtain a license online. You must schedule an appointment to receive your marriage license, the city's website says. To be eligible for an appointment, please ensure that the intended date of your marriage is finalized and you have an officiant that has agreed to perform the marriage. However, even proof of vaccination may halt plans to legally wed. When you arrive at town hall for your scheduled appointment, you will be required to complete a COVID-19 self-assessment, the city said. If you do not successfully meet the screening criteria, you will not be allowed to enter the building and your appointment will be canceled. There could be a way around the COVID jab passport system for now, as not every city in Ontario requires proof of the jabs in order to obtain a marriage license. Halton Hills, for example, does not currently require inoculation proof to get the government marriage license. Now, that's the end of this article. What do you think about this? Leave a comment. This verse, or this situation reminds me of a verse in the Bible, 1 Timothy 4:2-3, where it says, such teachings come through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. They forbid people to marry. And it seems today that people are being forbidden to marry. I mean, for an infectious disease that you have a 99.98% chance of surviving, these Canadians are being prevented from getting married. And most of us in the age group, that get married now would be in the very smallest of risk of getting COVID. Who knows, but other towns may start doing the same thing all around the world. Personally, I waited 30 years to get married. Finally finding a wife on Christian Filipina website, and I would have gotten married with leprosy if I could. I wanted to be married very much. She might have had leprosy too, and I still would have gotten married. I mean, we're supposed to have inalienable rights, and that goes for the whole world. Preventing people from getting married is a dumb idea. How long is this Canadian requirement going to exist? Forever? Anything that is against a nuclear family is something I am going to disagree with. We need more people getting married in this world, not less, or Well, not yet. You've heard me talk about MGTOW, men going their own way. I may start calling my bowel movements MGTOW movements. That's what I think about all that. This is a dissuasion of marriage on account of all women are the same. They are all out to get you. Once again, I have seen what divorce does to people, but some people's bad experiences shouldn't be used to compel or persuade others to avoid getting married. In fact, the Bible calls marriage the grace of life, 1 Peter 3:7. I believe that to mean the best there is. Here on Love Beyond the Sea, I will keep saying, get married. I have around, 845 videos on YouTube, 154 podcasts on Casting Beyond the Sea about marriage and being married to a woman from the Philippines. As a Christian, being single means no sex. If that doesn't scare you to death, I don't know what will. Companionship is essential in life, and nothing better than someone made specifically like you, yet unlike you, which is God's design. God made a woman for a man like him, but unlike him in just the right ways, and it's challenging in just the right ways to provide the greatest joyful experience of life, if you can find it. And I just don't think it's so out there that now people consider it a good life to be single. I just don't like that. I'm looking through some notes here before I close. The Bible talks about forbidding to marry. I'm going to skip ahead here. There's something else that is a bit like forbidding to marry, and that is dissuading singles from focusing on getting married. And I'm referring now to church experiences. I had a lot of those. No wise church person, like a pastor or an elder, will, tell someone that they have it best when they are single. Not if they're wise. They might tell them that, but I don't agree with it. As someone who was alone for 30 years, I often heard how I was making such a big deal about getting married. Many marriages end in divorce, they say. You won't get much sex. They warned, being single is better. A singles pastor told me. I stood my ground then, and I stand my ground with Love Beyond the Sea. If I had listened to people tell me I was better off doing my own thing whenever I wanted, there wouldn't be a Love Beyond the Sea. And some people who have given up, or close to being those that give up, would not have a second chance through this channel. I wouldn't have pursued a woman from nearly 10,000 miles away for marriage that happened in less than 8 weeks if I had given up. We've been married for 6 years and 5 months. I thought I heard it all during that time. In fact, I will link for you a playlist that I made called Cringeworthy Things Said to Single Christian Men. It will help you to know how to respond to comments that almost make you want to feel bad about wanting to get married. Having said that, there are some people who have the gift of singleness who do not need to marry, and they should not be forbidden from remaining single. I want to be clear about that. I will conclude with remarks from Pastor John MacArthur about singleness in marriage. He says, he's talking about 1 Corinthians 7, and what Paul said by way of a brief summary is this: marriage is normal. Marriage is for the majority. God has made us to marry. Marriage is good, but marriage is not an absolute commandment for everybody. Why is that? Because God has, according to verse 7, this is from 1 Corinthians 7, given some people the charisma or the gift of being single. Let me interject here. It's not a circumstance of being single. MacArthur calls it a charisma or a gift of being single. That is the ability by the Holy Spirit, who is God, to totally control sexual desire. And if that's what God gifted you with, then your singleness is a unique gift of God and ought to be used for His glory. And let me interject again. If you have not been given that spiritual gift of singleness, then Getting married should be done to God's glory. That's what I like to talk about here on Love Beyond the Sea. So continuing with MacArthur, marriage is the norm. It isn't commanded. It isn't an absolute. But it is the norm to avoid fornication, sexual involvement. You should get married, he says. But for some who have the gift of being single, being able to be single, that's a special blessing of God, and it should be maintained because it puts you in a position to be used by Him in a very unique way. So there's a general principle. Marriage is normal. Singleness is the exception. It's a gift of God. If you have it, then it's something you ought to hold to and cherish as a special gift from God. End of quote. It is appalling. This Canadian town requires proof of COVID vaccination in order to get married. Tell me what you think in the comments section. Can this happen in America? Maybe it already is. I don't know. I am fully vaccinated, and so is my wife. But if I wasn't, I would do whatever I had to do in order to marry my love beyond the sea.